Hello and welcome back to George Washington News.
It's been a busy month. We'll be discussing international relations between the U.S. and Ukraine, Trump's potential elimination of the Department of Education, and the growing epidemic of bird flu.
We will also cover the Kennedy Center's election of Trump as chairman of their board, as well as get updates from our lifestyle correspondents on fun spring outdoor activities now that the weather is getting warmer.
Finally, this month's special segment is the Weather Report, where we talk to the Executive Director of the GW Sustainability Alliance, Frank Sesno, about climate change and how it might be impacted by the new administration.
Back to the show. I'm Nina Rodriguez.
And I'm Nicola Kumite. First up, President Trump has called for a government takeover of Washington, D.C. Republican lawmakers introduced the Bowser Act, named after current D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, that would eliminate the district's local government, elected mayor, and its city council. It also calls for Congress to legislate for the 700,000 residents. The president called for this takeover after claiming the local D.C. government was, quote, not doing the job, unquote, referring to crime and homelessness. Mayor Bowser responded to President Trump's ambitions by saying, quote, home rule is a limited self-government, but what we should be focused on is our pathway to becoming the 51st state, unquote.
International relations between the United States and Europe intensify as there are surprising voting results from the UN General Assembly, as well as a potential deal between the United States and Ukraine. Sophie Leek has the story.
Russia's war with Ukraine has caused a tide to turn in foreign relations between the United States and Europe. This past Monday, the United States voted alongside North Korea, Russia, and 14 other countries in good relation with Moscow against a UN resolution that condemned Russian aggression and called for Russia to return Ukraine's territory at a UN General Assembly meeting in New York. This meeting marked the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as well as a potential shift in American alliance to Ukraine. The United States delegation proposed a competing resolution that solely called for an end to the war in Ukraine. This resolution passed in the 193-member body after anti-Russian language was used. The United States' position at the UN General Assembly meeting are not a bold surprise, as U.S. President Trump's alignment with Russia has been showcased through previously accusing Ukraine of initiating the war and referring to Ukrainian President Zelensky as a, quote, dictator. In response to the current happenings in the conflict, President Trump proposed the critical minerals and rare earths deal. This deal asks Ukraine to relinquish 50% of its mineral wealth to the United States in exchange for defensive aid. The increasing tensions between world leaders and the realignment of alliances causes this war to become uncertain and unpredictable. For GWN, I'm Sophie Leek.
Thanks, Sophie. Federal workers received an email over the weekend from DOGE telling them to name 5 things they did the previous week, or be fired. While some are moving forward to answer the email, other agencies warn their employees not to answer, signaling that not everyone is ready to comply with DOGE. NBC Now reports that the information provided will be fed into an AI program to determine who will be kept. The public is now flooding the email with trolling responses, including a significant number of B-movie scripts. The cuts come as Elon Musk's agency continues to plow through the federal workforce to reduce spending.
The incoming Trump administration has proposed eliminating the Department of Education, which would include eliminating federal aid for students. Ananya Gandezi has the story.
Tonight, a closer look at the Trump administration's budget cuts and what they mean for students applying for financial aid. The federal government's spending plan is tightening, and that includes a major freeze on funding for education assistance programs. The free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, helps millions of students afford college. But proposed budget cuts under the Trump administration could make that process even tougher, leaving some students with fewer to no options to pay for school. The administration's budget plan includes deep cuts to several key education programs and even dismantling the Department of Education altogether. One of the biggest concerns, a potential freeze on Pell Grant funding, which provides crucial support for low-income students. While the maximum award remains the same, the freeze may mean fewer students may qualify, and future increases could be off the table.
I feel I feel a little bit nervous surrounding it because I am personally a recipient of FAFSA aid. And so I know that that will put a constraint on my ability to pay for school.
If they cut my financial aid, I won't be able to go to school here anymore.
Beyond Pell Grants, reductions in federal work study and other aid initiatives could make college less accessible. Advocacy groups argue these changes put more financial pressure on students and families, making it harder to attend or complete a degree.
Honestly, I think there's going to be a lack of diversity because a lot of students, statistics-wise, a lot of POC students can't afford college and a lot of opportunities that they're given without aid. And I think if they cut the aid, then diversity goes down.
Yeah, I definitely think it will hurt the student population. Student population in terms of being able to afford to go to school here at GW, and then also the diversity as well, socioeconomic wise, and then therefore that might permeate into other diversity groups.
For now, these cuts are proposals, but they signal a shift in federal priorities that could affect future financial aid availability. Students and families should keep an eye on upcoming budget decisions that may impact their educational plans. For GWN, I'm Ananya Ganesi.
Thanks, Ananya. According to the Vatican, Pope Francis has been hospitalized due to a pneumonia diagnosis. His condition was described as, quote, critical, unquote. But there have apparently been signs of slight improvement. The Cardinal's vicar general, however, sent out a memo to the priests of the New York Archdiocese saying that the Pope is, quote, nearing the end of his earthly journey, end quote. According to CNN, Francis was elected at the age of 76 in 2013 and has been hospitalized 4 times in his term as Pope. Catholics around the world are praying for his safe recovery.
A measles outbreak has occurred in Texas that hospitalized 124 and killed a school-aged student, according to NBC. Measles was thought to have been eradicated back in 2000, but has seen a resurgence as more and more Americans are leaving their children unvaccinated. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that, quote, "We are following the measles epidemic every day," unquote, but also that the outbreak was not, quote, not unusual. "We have measles outbreaks every year," unquote. This is the first death of measles that has been reported in 10 years.
The John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts Board named President Donald Trump its chairman earlier this month, leaving a number of events canceled and artists considering canceling shows due to a drop in sales. Grace Eagleton has the story.
Performers are left considering their options after Kennedy Center ticket sales begin to drop. According to the Washington Post, ticket profits have fallen roughly 50% week after week since President Donald Trump announced his takeover. Numerous shows have already been canceled by the center and by artists themselves. The Kennedy Center said it canceled 2 shows for financial reasons, and at least 5 artists canceled their own performances, citing disapproval of Trump's takeover. Comedian and actress Issa Rae is among the artists who canceled their own shows after Trump's takeover. She was the first to announce on Instagram that Trump as chairman is, quote, an infringement on the values of an institution that has faithfully celebrated artists of all backgrounds through all mediums, end quote. Tickets for her show had been sold out before she canceled it. Trump first announced his intentions to take over the Kennedy Center in a post on Truth Social, in which he said he promised to make the center, quote, great again, end quote. He also called the Kennedy Center a, quote, American jewel that must reflect the brightest stars on its stage from all across our nation, end quote. Recently, Trump said there was an event at the Kennedy Center in the past year that featured drag shows specifically targeting young audiences, and he has made it clear that he intends to show that performances like these, quote, will stop, end quote. Among the shows canceled include the original musical Finn, and writer Christopher Diamond told the Washington Post that the musical could be seen as an allegory for the LGBTQ+ experience. Diamond said that the show was a, quote, financial success, end quote, in its initial run, but the Kennedy Center said the show was canceled for financial reasons. Trump's takeover includes his firing of the Kennedy Center's Board of Trustees and appointment of new board members. Roughly 300 protesters gathered at Washington Circle earlier this month in protest of Donald Trump's hand-picked board, which includes Second Lady Usha Vance and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. The Kennedy Center Board has historically been run by bipartisan boards in the past. For GWN, I'm Grace Eagleton.
Thanks, Grace. Up next, more headlines and a check-in on cherry blossom season with our very own weatherman, Dan. Stay tuned.
Is what you hear with the Flyers. Andrei Svechnikov makes his return this season.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome back. My name is Dan Salim, aka Weatherman Dan. Is spring already here? We're just around the corner. We'll be answering that question today while also calling out that groundhog for as many lies to the public. But first, we're going to chat about this week and this upcoming week's rather pleasant weather. Now, despite the fun in the sun that we had yesterday, we've got a couple of cloudy days, perhaps with some showers later tonight. But that rain is really going to be confined to Thursday. Temperatures are also going to hold that steady average 50 to 60 degree average from earlier days in the week, so expect this evening to still be a chill day to walk across campus. As we move into the week, temperatures are going to temper down. Friday and Saturday will stand to be windier and cloudier than the weeks past. Sunday is where you're going to start to need your jacket again. There's still sun till Tuesday, but lows of 23 and highs of about 40 degrees aren't going to feel great, especially after the great week that we just had. As for the start, as we leave for spring break, the temperature starts to tick back up with some clouds, wind, and rain till Friday. So why are we going between warm spring days and the typical gross conditions for this month? Let's move to the touchscreen to answer that question. So what we're seeing here is our friends in the north getting some snow. Jet stream patterns this time of year are usually excited as well. You can even see that as we progress through the week. As I click over here, you'll see how the cold air comes down and the precipitation moves through. A lot of activity for the nation. And that's why we actually call March and the beginning of March going in like a lion and coming out like a lamb. While temperatures are going to drop, the wind will pick up. And we can rely on high pressure systems like this in Northern Virginia, this coming down here, which are going to bring the sun out and keep those clouds away. So in other words, Puxatawny Phil's prediction for 6 more weeks of winter is wrong for us and most people across the country this season. Given that most of our temperatures, we're going to be seeing that our temperatures are going to be higher than average from last year, 10 to 20 degrees to be exact. The lesson is learned that you don't get your weather from a groundhog. All right, so aside from diverse weather ahead for this week, we're going to talk about cherry blossom season. It's on its way, it's right around the corner, and due to the higher than average temperatures, a result of global warming, bloom dates continue to get earlier and earlier by the year. This year, we're talking about probably the start of a bloom season and the cherry blossom season for the most part starting on the last week of March and the first week of April. This will also coincide with our 2025 Cherry Blossom Festivals. Lots of exciting events as we have an early start to our spring. Be sure to have your umbrella and jacket handy. Temperatures will be all over the place this week, but better days are ahead. Stay safe out there, GW. I'm Weatherman Dan. That was your forecast. Signing off till next time. Back to you, Nicole and Nina.
Welcome to the Planet Report, where I'll be taking you through all the latest in climate and sustainability news. I'm your host, Vivian Williams. Joining us this week is Professor Frank Sesno, a professor at the School of Media and Public Affairs at the George Washington University. He's also the executive director for the Alliance for a Sustainable Future, as well as the founder of Planet Forward, a nationwide environmental publication, and a lot more. So you're a busy man. Thank you for making the time to meet with us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, let's dive right in. We have very limited time, so I wanted to start with the incoming Trump administration. As we've seen, his policies have already impacted the climate world substantially, from pulling out of the Paris Agreement to withdrawing support from research even mentioning climate. So what does a second Trump term mean for climate action, and how do you think the climate movement sort of pivots from here?
I think it's going to be a very challenging second term. There are certain terms, as you say, that we can barely even mention, at least in the circles of the administration. But that's not going to change reality. It's not going to make fewer storms, less heat, less drought, less extreme weather, less coastal erosion. These problems are here, and they're getting worse, and they are made worse largely by climate change. So calling it by another name or stopping the research or slowing the research does not change the challenge. So what I think is going to happen, and it already is certain organizations, and this includes researchers and scholars here at GW and other universities, it includes the private sectors, are trying to find other ways to talk about these problems that aren't going to go away. So instead of talking about climate change, maybe we talk about community resiliency and how do communities stand up to these challenges. That means preparing for them. That means adapting to the changes that are taking place, trying to mitigate them, make them, if it's possible, to slow down the impact. So one is that people are going to have to figure out different ways to frame, to craft their message. The other thing is that some organizations are just going to see the funding stop, and they're going to have to go elsewhere. So that may be to wealthy individuals who believe in this kind of thing and want to support the activities, the research. It may be companies or foundations that still believe in it and want to step in when the government steps out. I think at the end of the day, this, I hope anyway, but I really believe it, will be a moment. It may be a long moment, and it may be a very costly moment. But we will come back to this because we have to, and because we have scientists and businesses and students and young people who know that this is real, it's not going away, and we cannot shirk our responsibilities, even though people don't want to talk about it at the governmental level right now.
So you think as the administration continues to pool funding, more like private donors and like small donors will like step in?
I don't know how many small donors it will be, and maybe.
That's
and
tough.
There can be campaigns for that. What we have seen in the past, when environmental and other things are suddenly under siege, people who believe in the cause and in the changes that need to be made or the research that needs to happen will step in. Caution, though. There is almost no way that I could imagine wealthy individuals, philanthropists and others stepping in to fill the gap of the billions of dollars of research that the federal government has sponsored. And so if they really pull back from all of this, if they walk away from the science, that will be very damaging and very destructive.
Right, and we would lose a lot of time and with climate
We'll lose
initiatives.
precious time because we know that the change is happening. In some places it's accelerating, and we can be hitting tipping points from which it's very difficult to recover.
So earlier you mentioned framing these climate conversations. This brought me back to something you said during your recent Sesno series with former New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu. So when you guys were discussing climate rhetoric, you said, quote, "Fear-mongering is wrong and the left has been driving some of that. Many climate groups want to reframe." So how do you think politicians can best walk that line between, like, quote-unquote, fear-mongering and addressing climate urgency?
It's a great question, and I think it really gets to making it real. So an example is, a few years ago, we had 4 mayors on stage, and we talked to them about sustainability and how do you speak to lower-income communities in your cities who are maybe principally worried about putting food on their table, the jobs they have, their kids, their education, all that, and for whom sustainability, frankly, is a luxury. And they said, well, what we try to do is not make it a luxury, not make it about hugging trees, but about saying to them, for example, we can come to your home and do an energy audit and save you money. We're going to plant trees on your street, not to absorb carbon dioxide, but to provide more shade so it's cooler on a hot summer day, so making it real. We had a farmer come and speak to us, and he was a fourth-generation Maryland farmer. He said, I don't need to talk about climate change. I'm just telling you the rains have changed. And he had to re-berm and put new drainage in his property so that the topsoil was not running off when he got these, what would have become these very sudden downpours that are now more common. So I think what has to happen, and what will happen, is a more direct connection to people, to their communities, to what is happening, and the changes that some of them are that are very good about inventing the future.
Right, so more at a community level, less at a federal level.
Community level, less at a federal level, perhaps. We can't walk away from federal responsibilities in this sort of global challenge that we confront. But what we can try to do is to put it in terms that people who are busy people, who are trying to put food on the table and take their kids to and from school and get their homework done each day, can understand and can relate to their own lives. There are those in the environmental movement. There's Project Drawdown, for example, and they say that we, the environmental movement, have put this too much in stark terms and sacrifice terms, in terms of sort of the war on climate change and setting this up as a battle. We need to find more and better ways to talk to people in a more relatable and positive construct.
Absolutely, and I think I wanted to bring it back to something you said. You said hopefully just a moment, maybe a long moment.
Maybe a long moment.
So we've seen in this moment thousands of workers from the Department of Energy have laid off and hundreds from the EPA have been laid off. Do you think that those jobs will fill up again in the future with the new administration, or how do you think that reframes?
It's really hard to say. This is why, this may be a moment, it may be a long moment, right? I liken this situation to the California, the Los Angeles wildfires. We have wildfires burning right now. Eventually the fires will go out and we'll rebuild. But how long will it take? How much is actually damaged in the process? We don't know. What's the hardest part in some of these jobs that are being lost, and some of them maybe can be lost, and there's efficiencies. There's too much for us to know. We don't even know.
Right.
We don't have that level of detail. What we do know, though, is that there are excellent and experienced scientists with years of research and experience who are getting thrown out. We know that there are databases that we don't have access to any longer because of some of the steps that the administration has taken. Whether you agree with climate change or not, whether you agree with some of the steps that have been taken in recent years, you don't just obliterate research and data because you don't agree with it. That's valuable information that should be there for everybody. And that's the thing that concerns me the most, is turning your back on the research and the science that's out there because there's something in the message you don't like.
Right, and it's becoming politicized, really.
Highly politicized. And again, there are plenty of places to debate and discuss, whether it's how much money gets invested in electric vehicle infrastructure, or whether solar farms are better than wind farms or better than nuclear plants. I mean, these are all legitimate talking points and debates. But what's not legitimate is suppressing fact, turning your back on science, and saying, because we don't like something, we're going to push it off center stage. In fact, we're going to take it down altogether. That's very troubling.
Well, I think that's a great place to close it off. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But thank you so much again for joining me on the show. And to everyone watching, stay tuned for upcoming segments of the Planet Report. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. Earlier this month, front desk workers were given a checklist of what to do if U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers visited the university. According to the GW Hatchet, the list instructed workers not to allow officers to seize university property unless explicitly required to do so by warrant, and alert GWPD officers attempt to enter non-public spaces. This comes after Donald Trump previously signed an executive order declaring that ICE officers were allowed to enforce immigration orders in previously safe spaces such as churches and schools, prompting worries from students as well as administrators across the country.
Donald Trump recently posted an apparently AI-generated video to his Instagram depicting the Gaza Strip transformed into a luxury resort. The video, which also included a likely AI-generated song with lyrics such as, quote, "Trump, Gaza is finally here," unquote, has come under fire for its insensitive portrayal of the Middle East conflict. Earlier in February, Trump said that the United States should take ownership of Gaza, calling it the future, quote, "Rivera of the Middle East," unquote. When asked about the video, White House spokesperson Anna Kelly said, quote, "President Trump is a visionary, and his plan will allow for Palestinians to resettle in new, beautiful communities," unquote.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture fired tens of thousands of federal workers over Valentine's weekend who were working on the growing cases of the bird flu. Now they are working on to retract those. Lucy Garza has the story.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture said on Tuesday, February 19th, that it was currently trying to reverse the firings of several staffers working on the government's response to bird flu. This follows a public celebration of the matter on Twitter days before, calling it part of their aggressive plan to optimize their workforce. Mass firings have been seen throughout the federal government since Donald Trump took office in January as part of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE. Days after the affair, the USDA was seen desperately trying to get these staffers back, especially those working with the highly pathogenic avian influenza, which is otherwise known as bird flu.
An outbreak of bird flu in the U.S. has been ongoing since 2022 and has killed 156 million birds in the process, according to BBC. Several job categories like veterinarians and animal health technicians have now been exempted from recent personnel actions to support these efforts, according to a statement from the agency. Americans are now truly feeling the effects of the outbreak, facing a low supply of eggs with soaring prices and some even contracting the disease themselves. A recent CDC study that was released in January also suggested that some spillovers from dairy cattle are now infecting veterinarians with bird flu, and their diagnoses are going undetected due to a lack of staffing. Several government agencies, in addition to the USDA, currently play a role in responding to the outbreak, like the National Animal Health Laboratory Network and Agricultural Research Service, which have also started to see layoffs occur. Both Democrats and Republicans have begun to raise questions about the swiftness of DOGE with firing federal employees and the errors that can occur as a result. The USDA is not the only example. The week before the USDA's error, the National Nuclear Security Administration issued a memo rescinding the firings of all but some 24 employees. Many federal employees, despite having glowing performance reports, are now facing job uncertainties. The Trump administration has pressured some with payouts and targeted emails, although their fate still remains uncertain. For GWN, I'm Lucy Garza.
Thanks, Lucy. Next up, our lifestyle correspondents, Cassidy and Raina, are here to break down the best events and attractions in DC this spring. Take it away, Cassidy.
Like Weatherman Dan just said, lately DC has been proving Punxsutawney Phil wrong. With spring fast approaching, we are so ready for all the fun outdoor activities that come along with it. I'm Cassidy.
And I'm Raina.
Here's some fun events coming up this March to enjoy the beautiful weather in the DC area.
The Wharf is having a Mardi Gras parade on Saturday, March 1st from 3 to 7 p.m. The event will feature live music, fireworks, photo booths, and fun. This is a free event for the whole family to enjoy. Face painting and other kid-friendly activities will be available, and anyone over 21 will get to enjoy Hurricane cocktails made with the Wharf's own Thrasher's Rum at the Market Square Party Zone.
And don't miss out on the taste of New Orleans cuisine, available at Wharf restaurants like Del Mar, Hanks, and Willow Song. If you stop by Del Mar, you can actually catch their parade viewing party. Tickets include access to the restaurant's second-story balcony and a Mardi Gras-themed buffet. Still craving a sweet treat after all the fun? Then visit Praline Bakery, where they will be serving up Mardi Gras cakes, bourbon bread pudding, and pecan pralines.
Also happening on March 1st, another parade is coming to the DMV area. Be sure to check out the 42nd Annual St. Patrick's Day Parade in Old Town Alexandria. Come for Irish dancing, pipe bands, and lots of other entertainment. Everyone, Irish or not, will be lucky enough to enjoy the festivities. The parade officially starts at the corner of King Street and St. Aspen Street at 12:30 p.m., with dignitaries leading the procession at 12:15 p.m. The parade proceeds on King Street, turning north at Lay Street and west at Cameron Street, finishing at the intersections of Cameron and Pitt. The event will be opened by the Ballyshires, meaning Old Town in Gaelic, like Old Town Alexandria.
This next one is actually indoors, but it is still the perfect way to welcome the spring season. Make sure to head on over to the United States Botanic Gardens Conservatory, where the showcase, Orchids, Masters of Deception, will be displayed. The showcase is in its 29th consecutive year and is a collaboration between the U.S. Botanic Garden and the Smithsonian Gardens. One highlight of the showcase is its 2 9-foot-tall tree sculptures covered in hundreds of pink and white orchids, a nod to DC's famous cherry blossoms. This beautiful display will be open through April 27th.
Thank you so much, guys. I definitely look forward to going to the Botanic Gardens. I've actually never been, so might be time to check it out.
Yeah, me neither. It would be a good opportunity because I was thinking of going, I think during like the holiday season, they have a poinsettia exhibit that looked really cool. So exactly, like now's like my chance to go finally.
How exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited for both parades too, even though I'm not Irish or from New Orleans. I think both would be fun just to go to.
Everyone is looking forward to trying King's Cake this Mardi Gras season.
Ooh, that sounds good.
That sounds really good, yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Last weekend, the annual spring celebration, GW took place on campus. Students had the chance to compete in the flag design contest, Battle of the Banners, goofy obstacle courses, George's Amazing Race, and mock pageants for the GW crown. The event also included tailgates and free food as students cheered on their favorite teams in 2 basketball games. The 3-day celebration was a great opportunity for students to unite in their school spirit and take a break from midterms.
The White House will now have control over the press pool that covers President Trump, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said during a news briefing on Tuesday. The White House will determine which news outlets have access to Trump, which was previously determined by the White House Correspondents Association for the past century. The WHCA says this decision, quote, tears at the independence of a free press, unquote. Press Secretary Leavitt says that these changes will allow for new media outlets to gain access to spaces such as Air Force One and the Oval Office that were previously filled by legacy media. That's all we have for you this episode. For GWN, I'm Nina Rodriguez.
And I'm Nicola Kumite. Thank you all for watching.